Welcome back. Mike Howell here of the Oversight Project. We have an awesome panel. This is going to be a fun panel, and I'm happy to be the immoderate moderator of it. But first, a shout out to Garrett Ziegler. As a man whose favorite communication style is ranting, that was a heck of a rant slash speech, and well said, all true. We have some great panelists here, very prolific public commentators, leaders who have built things, who have been in the crucible, and I don't want to waste any more time to take away from them. So I'm going to turn it over to my good buddy, Douglas Mackey, to talk about the issues we're here to talk about, which is the role that the media plays in narrative shaping, how that deprives people of their rights, makes them targets, and so forth. But before I do, we're talking about media. We're not talking about the other thing, which is called journalism. People conflate those two things too much. We don't have really journalism in this country. We have corporate media control. And so with that, just setting the table, Doug, over to you, buddy.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. So my name's Douglas Mackey, and 7 days after Joe Biden was inaugurated in 2021, I got a knock on the door. It was the FBI saying that I was under arrest. I said, what for? What could this possibly be? It turns out in 2016, I sent out a meme saying that Hillary Clinton supporters could text their vote, and they felt like this meme was the basis of a grand conspiracy to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. So that night, after I got out of arraignment, well, first of all, let's talk about the arraignment. I had no idea what was going on other than I was being charged with a federal felony. Conspiracy against rights, a 19th century statute, colloquially known as the KKK Act, the Klan Act. So so why in the world am I being charged with this crime? They slapped a copy of the criminal complaint. And as I'm reading the criminal complaint, as the lady U.S. Marshal is taking me out of leg irons, I realize that this tracks a dox effort that the Huffington Post wrote about me 2 years earlier in 2018. So the Huffington Post story became the basis for this indictment in certain ways, and sort of identifying me as somebody who was using this fictional satirical Twitter account in 2016. So I get out of the arraignment. I got the criminal complaint in my hand. I go home, but I have to well, first of all, they encouraged me not to bring my wallet or my cell phone to the arraignment. So once I got out of there, my roommates had no idea what was going on, so they had left about a few minutes earlier. So I had to bum a ride with a nice Haitian gentleman cab driver who allowed me to get my wallet and go to an ATM and pay. And that very night, what is Rachel Maddow's leading segment on her show? Well, none other than my prosecution of some guy posting a joke in 2016. Fast forward. So to make a long story short, 2 years later, we went to trial after trying to dismiss the case and failing. And we were interested in bringing in an expert commentator from the University of Alabama, and he was going to talk about meme culture and that sort of thing and give an expert opinion. Well, a freelancer purportedly working for the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, was threatening this gentleman that he was going to go to his university and get him in hot water. So he backed out at the last minute. So the point of all this is today, fast forward to today, to make a long story short, I won the case. I was acquitted. And now I'm working with Weaponization Watch with Cynthia Hughes, who I think very much were putting this on. But we've noticed as we've studied cases like mine and like others of weaponized justice, mostly Biden-era cases, some of which are still ongoing today, there are a number of alarming similarities. We know that they are selective prosecutions with novel and stretched legal theories, threats of excessive and punitive sentencing, and more importantly, media coordination in both directions. Too often the media appears to operate in lockstep with these prosecutors, and I would mention that it's a symbiotic relationship. We see when the media is feeding the prosecutors information that they can use in their cases, and we're also seeing where the prosecutors are feeding the media information that they can leak to set a favorable narrative, which is obviously not what they're supposed to be doing, but this is how they set the landscape for trials and everything else to turn the media against you. So we've seen with the Biden era DOJ, with the media collusion here with the prosecutors, where conservatives, Trump supporters, or individuals connected to industries that Biden simply didn't like crypto, especially, are targeted, publicly smeared, and then aggressively prosecuted. So it makes you wonder whether these journalists are speaking truth to power, or whether they are stenographers, or in some cases, mop-up men, regime janitors trying to clean up the mess, in some cases, that the government has created. So I'll give you an example. Just recently, Trump's Solicitor General, John Sauer, directed the EDNY, Eastern District of New York, to seek dismissal of charges in a FIFA bribery case related to the World Cup. And the DOJ had made the determination that these charges were not going to uphold on appeal to the Supreme Court, and they didn't want to defend them given the court's recent history of limiting federal fraud statutes. So what we saw immediately was that career prosecutors within the EDNY pushed back against John Sauer and leaked to the press, in this case, Bloomberg. And this underscored the career line prosecutors, their willingness to buck Trump's administration and to go to the media and to go around and try to get their way, and to use the media selectively as a blunt instrument against Trump and against MAGA. There's other cases. We've seen a number of cases where the FBI has worked hand in hand with Netflix. There's a case called One Taste, where they actually use a lot of manipulated video footage as evidence in the case, and got in trouble for it with the courts. Of course, nobody was ever punished, and the judges didn't even slap them on the wrist. So we see this time and time again, and it's an issue that we have to confront head on as we enter these midterms coming up.
Yeah, before we proceed really quickly, I want to fixate on the last thing you said about Netflix and the One Taste case. This to me is such an absurd example of how out of control things were under the previous, administration of justice, where you have the FBI working with a clear ideological and partisan outlet that's a supranational corporation. Netflix is one of the biggest in the United States, and so big that people truly understand its power. It's where Susan Rice goes. It's where Barack Obama goes. It is above the government in that, it funds the government and the people in there. It is more powerful and can hurt your civil rights by shaping the opinions of jurors and people around the country by just pushing them with content for a clear partisan or ideological or whatever purpose. How can anyone in America walk in front of a jury that has just seen a Netflix production that's being advertised and highly produced, that's shaped by the federal government against the people they're going after? And you look at all the things the Trump administration needs to unravel, and this one that's sitting in front of them is just an example of how out of control things have gotten and how hard it is for them, for whatever reason, to turn the system of justice around to back to a place of neutrality. And so, I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about that case and the role of Netflix more broadly, and then also the role of the government in shaping narratives, because that is so counter to our system of the neutral administration of justice, where you can have Hollywood level propaganda films against you while you're fighting for your rights. It makes zero sense. And if the Trump administration wants to win, they should look no further. I promised not to talk too much, and I made myself a liar. So, Colonel, over to you.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Doug and Garrett, for letting me be on this panel. I'm not sure why I'm here, except for, I want to say a couple things from a military and veterans perspective and a political perspective, because I entered the political arena shortly after I retired from the Air Force in 2013 and ran for the U.S. Senate in a state in the South against two establishment candidates. And the media was used in every race that I was in thereafter, because they saw that my message, which was secure the border, energy independence, and stop the endless wars, was resonating with the American people. The media was used to set a narrative to attack me personally over and over again. After serving over 32 years honorably in the United States Armed Forces, had been selected for command several times, had made a high enough rank where people said I was a senior leader. So after all of that, they tried to make me look like somebody that I wasn't. And they succeeded, because the media, the political parties, and the government coordinated together. And that's the failure that we have here, really, of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and the failure of what we call the free press. It's now the corporate media that is a narrative generator on behalf of the government, that is a narrative generator on behalf of political parties that want to maintain their power. And it's a narrative generator on behalf of people that probably shouldn't even be in this country. As a matter of fact, they shouldn't be in this country. The latest example of that is independent journalist Nick Shirley's Somali daycare and healthcare company fraud that's thought to be upwards of $9 billion. That's $9 billion of your money and my money that's being defrauded from us on behalf of a group of individuals that our politicians have not just allowed, but insisted be brought to this country. And it doesn't matter whether they were Democrats in charge like Tim Walz, who's no longer going to run for governor, or Tom Emmert, who is from Minnesota, and a Republican that shamed people for questioning wanting to bring the Somali refugees into this country in such large numbers. And that's the problem, is this entire deck of the corporate media is being used to work against you, the American taxpayer, the American citizen, where the free press was designed by our founders to be the watchdog, to be the voice on the outside that watched the government, that watched the corporations, that watched the powerful, so the folks without power would have a power in and of them to themselves in order to counteract that type of ideology, that type of effect. And we no longer have that. And that's why after I ran for office, I decided to get into the independent media business. And you're watching some of you are watching this on my social media live stream channels, I hope. Like on X, you can find me at Rob Maness there, simply because we have to have a set of institutions, as Garrett so wisely brought up in his rant. We have to build institutions to take the power away from the institutions that have become completely infested with leftist, progressive, Marxist ideology and ideologues, and the establishment, political, powerful people that still hold that power on both sides of the aisle, that want to keep their power and not let you have what you deserve, which is a free country that is free from corruption and where your tax dollars aren't wasted unwisely. And instead, maybe they're used to get rid of homeless veterans. We have over 30,000 homeless veterans on any given night in this country that are sleeping out in the cold. Why aren't we using all that money for that? Or to take care of the elderly more and increase their Social Security payments, for God's sake. You've been robbing Social Security for over 6 decades. Why not make it solvent using that money? And it all comes down to the media being able to control the narrative for whatever party they're doing it, and their willingness to do that instead of being the party that's supposed to be pushing back on our behalf. And that's why the weaponization of media is so important and is so wrong to be happening in this country.
Girdle, I can't resist. Now I'm going to make myself doubly a liar of mini rants, not a full-on rants. But on the first principles of what you just laid out, the information industry, or whatever we want to call it, media, journalism, is not like another institution. It's indispensable in that this whole system, an experiment in government, 250 years old, coming up here pretty soon, doesn't work if not for that thing. Because the whole point is the people are in charge of the government. We are the sovereign. That is what makes America unique. And that's why enshrined within the other, or the other parts of the First Amendment is the right of the free press. Because the founders knew that unless the people had unfiltered information to make independent judgments as to what the government is doing, should be doing, and so forth, that there is no potential for self-government. And that's where we're at now, like a civically uninformed population that's consumed with propaganda and whatnot. And the powers to be, when you see the relationship between the government and MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, New York Times, FBI working hand in glove with them throughout prosecutions and investigations and shaping narratives about it, we are so backwards and opposite of what the paper of the Constitution says in our practice of government. And so like that one is beyond the pale. And its ramifications for like political economy are one thing, but also in the administration of justice, which is the next frontier. You cannot have a free and fair and neutral justice system if you do not have like a vibrant and independent information economy. And so
I totally agree with that, and it goes into our national security
Yes.
too. I just want to, we talked before the panel, and I think we're all in agreement. Some of this is what the media refuses to cover and won't cover. And let me just tell you about a guy that I met just a few weeks ago, and I told this story on my show. He's a retired now brigadier general from the Air Force named Chris Sage. Chris has been pummeled by the weaponization of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the Inspector General system, over 4 years now, until he was forced to retire because they took his second star promotion away using the auto pin twice.
Wow.
He was forced to retire on the 31st of December. Just a few days ago. But the media has not covered that story because they're so invested in the COVID pandemic policies that still have all been proven to have been wrong, and the unlawful order that has been proven to be unlawful of making the military get the vaccine for COVID. But here's the other untold part of the story. It's not just that people like General Sage, but there are thousands of others below him at lower rank that don't have any power, that don't get the visibility, that are being treated the same way. But that's not the real issue. The real issue the media is not covering, ladies and gentlemen, is that over 95% of our force took that COVID-19 vaccine. And in spite of people like Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long and Ted Macy and Mark Bashaw and whistleblowers stating that the physical health of this force is in question and the readiness of this force to be able to go and fight and win a major war, if they were called upon to do that, is in question, is not being, reported on and not being told the truth to the American people so they have an understanding of what is happening and can make decisions to change this government and this executive branch that is almost completely out of the control of the elected president of the United States, which is not what the founders intended. And that's extremely important. We don't know if our force is ready or not because of these adverse reactions to that shot.
Terrifying. And we all know it was a political and ideological sorting exercise to clear out the military of people who actually had conservative or even common sense views. You said AutoPen, and I'm only going to take 30 seconds here because it connects to the media. After we released our AutoPen findings in March of last year, it's 2026 now, 2025, the New York Times, 2 weeks afterwards, went viral, probably because you guys retweeted it, thank you, called it a conspiracy theory on their big headline thing. A gentleman by the name of Ken Bensinger of the New York Times, longtime regime propagandist. I call him a bum steerer. If you look it up, a bum steerer is a lie, and he likes to lie. Well, 3 months after that, the New York Times got Joe Biden interviewed. He came out of the basement because, he was taking too much smoke from the AutoPen, and he admitted to the whole thing. He said, I didn't even approve the individual pardons. I just said, do some pardons and you could fill it in. So the New York Times is, proved how many other times over to be complete fabricators and liars. We know why they do it. We know exactly why they do it. They're a propaganda arm of the far left. And frankly, foreign nationals who run that company. Garrett, fill in the blanks.
Well, I would say that in a parallel track to creating new awards for prestige on the right, we should also urge elected officials, to the degree we can, to stop caring about what those legacy outlets put out. Their power, yes, they're still official papers of record, but their power is sentiment generation. If they really hate you enough, they can tar you enough, and even Republicans don't want to be seen by or seen with you if you get called certain names by the press. And so what it comes back to, again, back to my third thesis of the intro, is we have to stop caring about what they think, and the only way you do that is if you have courage. Mm-hmm. If you do not have the requisite backbone, you're going to care about what the left-wing press says about you. And sometimes it's only through a baptism by fire. You get indicted or you get sued, and sort of through scar tissue, you stop caring about what the left-wing press thinks about you. But we have still many people in Congress, in the House and Senate, who believe what those outlets say. And I think the best way to produce the righteous suspicion in those people's hearts is to use primary source documents. I'm going to talk about our book once more. The reason why they've resorted to the lowest logical fallacy, there's actually a logical fallacy pyramid that I love. I have it put up in my office. The bare bottom of it is name calling. They've resorted to calling me a racist, sexist, homophobic, Jew hater. It's all BS. But the reason why they've resorted to the bottom of that pyramid is because you cannot argue with primary source data. And so and this is why I love what the Oversight Project was doing with the pardon investigation, quasi-pardon, I should say, is it's reliant upon primary source data. We cannot, I'm a Christian, so I do believe in the miraculous. I believe that Jesus was born from a virgin and was raised from the dead. But beyond that, on this side of heaven, I don't believe in the miraculous. We should demand primary source evidence. So everybody who is a truthful writer, a truthful reporter, should become much more obsessed with finding the primary source evidence. For example, in Mr. Mackey's case, when you dig into a particular miscarriage of justice, the very first questions that we should be asking, and it's what the press doesn't, is who can get me the trial transcripts? I no longer will trust what somebody's opinion about those transcripts is if they do not provide the primary source evidence. It's like the only thing that Reuters does well. They will hyperlink to a court ruling. Okay, and I appreciate that, even though they're the enemy. Because if they don't, then I have to spend 5 minutes finding the URL. But in every piece that we do from here on out, and you guys do it already, but this is for the folks watching this. Really do your audience a service, and it will inspire trust on their part, because they will start rightfully believing that, hey, they're not hiding anything from me. Yes, they're writing about the thing that occurred, but they're providing the trial transcript. They're providing the wire transfer, right? That's the way that we can distinguish ourselves between from the blob. Is we think people are intelligent enough. My final thought is the folks that persecuted Douglas, they really have a low opinion of blacks, and I'll tell you why. They truly think, and if we're taking them at their word, that blacks are dumb enough to believe a meme that says you can vote by text message. It's bigotry of low expectations. They think black people are so dumb that they will follow that meme. And that's the way I would flip it around on them. We actually believe blacks don't think memes are how to vote. And that's another way to basically blow up their whole thought process of, hey, that's another way of looking at it. So I just think that all of this, by the way, all of what I'm saying only occurs if you have courage. If you do not have the requisite courage, none of these steps are going to be taken. So you need to ask God for the courage to do these reforms.
So lots to bounce off here. I'm going to toss one to the group for whoever wants to grab this third rail. I want to know what it is that you think is in the psychological or DNA of elected Republicans and other leaders where they need validation from MSNBC or whatever they call it, MS Now, or New York Times, the Sudoku rag, or whomever else. It's they want it, they crave it, and frankly, calling a spade, the White House plays into this game too. You see Axios continually getting scoops. Press that has been called the enemy of the people over and over again are the ones who get the real scoops or the real engagement from the White House. The same, President Trump calls them the enemy of the people. It's an incongruency there. And then you have this new setup of like conservative influencers sitting in like the kids' daycare. It's like a Smalley daycare, except there's actually kids there, and they don't get the real scoops. And it's like two different worlds, and we're never going to break the control if we keep at it this way. Why do you think this problem persists? Whoever wants it.
Well, I think it's purely a function of social relationships, of when these people get in the Beltway and they're socializing and fraternizing with each other. And this, unfortunately, becomes their little bubble that they're in, and they don't see outside of it. Whereas people down in Florida or Ohio or Idaho don't care about these relationships, and they don't care about the New York Times, where unfortunately conservatives are very sensitive. Even, we see where people go to a local restaurant and they get booed, or some Soros activists start throwing rotten fruit at them, or whatever happens. But I think power is exercised socially. And, I'll speak about my own life. I mean, unfortunately, once you get involved in politics, if you stand by your convictions, you're going to lose relationships, and you're going to damage relationships solely because the other person on the other side maybe can't wrap their head around it, that you might disagree with them or have a different opinion. So this happens, and unfortunately, we're human, and people are sensitive to that. So I think that's something that we need to overcome.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Mike. It's a great question, by the way. Great question. As somebody that's been a statewide political candidate a couple of times now, when I was presented with the opportunity to have CNN come into the house, or our house, and sit down with my wife and I and interview us, I was already knowledgeable, even though I'd only been out of the Air Force 2 years, that there was a certain ideological bent to CNN and other and MSNBC outlets and those kind of things, to where I raised my eyebrows and I said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" And then I immediately flipped back on myself when I was talking to my strategy guys, and I said, "But what I've been telling you is that I think my ideas are not partisan. The ideas that I ran on and Donald Trump won on, border security, energy independence, and stopping the endless war policies, are ideas that cross party lines. And for me, when I made the decision to go ahead and do it, I was like, well, it's increasing my audience, but I'm trying to reach this audience that isn't going to be on the side of the political party that I'm in, and I want to reach them. And I still, to this day, will take, if I get offered an opportunity, even on MSNBC, to do an interview, I will take that interview for that reason, knowing that they're going to do a hit piece on me 99.99% of the time. Same thing with the print press. There's almost always going to be a hit piece. They always use things that were created in my political campaigns, even to this day, 10 years later, in order to do that, to damage the message that I'm trying to send. But here's the kicker, is I know that message, if it gets out, even in their venue, that some people are going to hear it and go, "These guys' narrative is really wrong about this guy," or about the message that so-and-so is speaking. And I think that drives a lot of the politicians that are actually in office, if I had to guess, make an educated guess about it.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, just real quick, you mentioned the White House still giving those exclusive. I think that's a great point. I don't think it's been brought up today. And a very recent example is, why were they talking to Vanity Fair?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they give that exclusive to an up-and-comer? And you used another way of saying it. I love Tom Wolfe, the deceased writer from Manhattan. He called it statospheres, and it was in a 1980 book about the astronauts. So what you were describing is a swamp statosphere, and we have to totally obliterate that. We need people who do not want to become a priest in that swamp statosphere. We need people who operate in different statospheres. So I think that again, it's a spiritual problem. I'm not talking, liturgy or the fine details of the Nicene Creed or anything, but it is a spiritual problem where I think they're worried about their legacy. They still believe that the legacy of their life and their life's work is going to be written by the New York Times. And that's one of the reasons why we release this book, is no matter what lies Hunter spews, no matter what lies Mike Schmidt puts out as Hunter's legacy, whatever Hunter's obit says in the New York Times, there's going to be this obituary in a way. So you need to convince these weak-kneed Republicans that, hey, your legacy is not going to be honored by the people you care about in the New York Times. And I think then they will stop caring about what is printed about them. But to make that effective, we also need a new prestige ecosystem of truth-telling publications to fill in that legacy gap, because everybody, I think, in politics wants to have a good legacy and think that what they did was righteous. And if they think the Washington Post is going to be the one writing that, they'll care that the Washington Post called me a Nazi, which is of course preposterous.
Yeah.
So I think it's the statosphere question.
Yeah, that's extraordinarily well said. And I'll just add to it, is the quickest way not to have a legacy is for political leaders to be worrying about what their legacy will be in the midst of a cold civil war that's happening in a country that's coming apart at the seams, in a political movement, let's be honest, over the last 50 years of the far left, that has destroyed so much of our country and our institutions. The fact that anybody from the president on down can be thinking about like legacy in terms of total victory, which is so far away, it should just be beyond anyone's concern at this moment. We got to hit what's in front of our face and start digging out of the mess we're in, instead of worrying about what Vanity Fair or others may write or photograph us doing.
Yeah,
I know
I
you don't have
was-
that problem.
It was the photo shoot that really sent me over the edge.
Yeah, it's out of touch. It's certainly like, I'm not trying to knock. They're good people. Everyone's trying to do their best. It's a tough situation, but we got to call a spade a spade.
The only legacy they ought to be worried about is the legacy of the country that's free and prosperous for our children and grandchildren. That's the eye on the prize and the target that needs to be on the horizon for everybody.
This is a high stakes battle we find ourselves in. And for a lot of people who are associated with this group and Patron Freedom Project, that's their independent, that's their freedom. Their lives are at stake. And it's not, legacy and political framing and who gets the fancy write up. And it's not whether we have a country or we don't, and whether we're free people or not. So
250 years, yeah.
250 years in. And, the next 250 is not guaranteed.
Absolutely.
Of course not.
And so, gentlemen, thank you for being a part of that fight, for being the focus of that fight. Doug, you particularly, and Garrett, you've had your turn in the barrel as well. And
Just civil. I've only faced a civil lawfare. Douglas has been in the belly of the beast.
That's right.
And I urge everybody, talk about primary sources, to go read the Second Circuit opinion on Douglas's case released last July. It was gorgeous. It was unanimous. It was a total beatdown of the EDNY.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.